The building blueprint showed 53 doors on the 4th floor of the Marchmont Office Complex. I counted 54. My name is David Reese, and I'm a commercial property inspector, which means I spend my days measuring load-bearing walls, checking for code violations, and occasionally finding dead rats in the air conditioning systems. Thrilling stuff, as I'm sure you'll agree. The Marchmont job was supposed to be routine. All I had to do was verify the structural integrity before the new owners gutted the place and converted it into luxury condos. The building had been empty for 6 years, ever since some pharmaceutical company went belly up and abandoned it overnight. I arrived on a Tuesday morning in October, the kind of day where the sky looks like dirty dishwater and the air tastes like wet concrete. The security guard who let me in, a guy named Marcus with a lazy eye and a thermos that smelled like bourbon, handed me the master key and told me to lock up when I finished. "Don't spend too long in there," he said, already walking back to his car. "Why not?" He paused, one hand on the door handle. "Place gives me the creeps. Always has." I laughed it off. Every abandoned building gives people the creeps. It's the emptiness, the way sound moves differently through vacant spaces. You don't realize it, but people muffle a lot of tiny sounds. In places like this, everything is amplified 100-fold. You can hear the slightest noise, even your own breathing. If you were ever in an empty school after class when you were young, you'll know what I mean. It just feels odd. But it's just because we're not used to it. Still, there's nothing supernatural about it. I started on the ground floor and worked my way up, room by room, making notes on my tablet. Almost straight away, I found water damage in the northeast corner. Then, an infestation of mold growing behind the drywall in what used to be a break room. Standard decay. By the time I reached the 4th floor, it was past noon and my stomach was growling. I often skipped breakfast. The 4th floor was executive territory. Corner offices with floor-to-ceiling windows, and a conference room with a table that probably cost more than my car. To be honest, that wasn't difficult. I walked the perimeter, checking each door against the blueprint on my tablet. Northeast offices, doors 1 through 8, check. Conference room, supply closets and restrooms, doors 9 through 20, check. Southwest offices, doors 21 through 35, check. That's when I noticed something strange. Between offices 47 and 48, there was another door. Not a big deal, right? Blueprints get outdated, renovations happen. Except this door didn't look like the others. Every door in the Marchmont complex was standard commercial grade. A blonde oak veneer with a narrow window of frosted glass and a brushed aluminium handle. Modern, uniform, but ultimately forgettable. This door was wood. Real wood. Dark, almost black, with a grain that seemed to shift when I looked at it from different angles. It had no window or handle like the others. Just a smooth surface and a keyhole that looks like it belonged in a Victorian mansion, not a 1990s office building. I checked the blueprint again. The space between 47 and 48 was supposed to be a utility closet, maybe 4 feet wide. I measured the distance between the 2 office doors. 12 feet. More than enough room for something else. I tried the master key. It didn't fit. The sensible part of my brain, the part that had spent 15 years inspecting buildings and never once encountered anything weird, told me to mark it down as a locked storage room and move on. But the other part, the part that kept glancing back at that too dark wood and that wrong keyhole, wanted to know what was inside. We all know what that feeling's like, those intrusive thoughts. We just can't resist not knowing. It's why we're human, I suppose. I knocked. The sound didn't echo the way it should have. It just stopped, like the door swallowed it. "This is stupid," I said out loud, just to hear my own voice. I pulled out my phone and called Marcus. No answer. I tried again. Still nothing. I checked my signal, full bars, but the call wouldn't go through. Probably the building's steel frame interfering with reception. It happens sometimes. It can build a kind of Faraday cage. I walked back to the stairwell, planning to grab some lunch from my truck and forget about the door. I had a tuna sandwich waiting for me with my name on it. But when I reached the stairs, I stopped. The door was behind me. I could feel it. Not physically. I couldn't hear anything, and I couldn't see it from where I stood. But I knew it was there, the way you know someone's watching you in a dark room. That indescribable sensation of something being there. I went back. The hallway lights flickered as I approached. One of them went out entirely, leaving a pool of shadow right in front of the door. I took out my flashlight and aimed it at the wood. The beam seemed to bend around it, like the door existed slightly to the left of where it should be. I reached out and touched it. The wood was warm. Not room temperature warm, body warm, feverish warm. I jerked my hand back, but not before I felt something else. It was almost vibrating, but it was so imperceptible I doubted myself. "Okay," I said. "Okay, that's enough." I turned to leave, and just as my back was turned, the door opened with a creak. Not all the way, just an inch. Just enough for me to see that there was light on the other side. A pale, sickly light that didn't belong in an abandoned building with no electricity. Every instinct I had screamed at me to run. Instead, those intrusive thoughts won over again. I pushed the door open. The room beyond was impossible. It stretched back farther than the building itself. The floor was covered in industrial carpet, the same grey-blue carpet that covered the rest of the fourth floor. But it went on and on, past where the exterior wall should have been, past where I should have been able to see daylight through the windows. The ceiling was a grid of glowing panels, all of them lit, even though there was no power running to the building, as far as I knew. They buzzed like fluorescent lights tend to do. The hum pervaded my head and made it ache. The walls were lined with doors, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all identical to the one I'd just walked through. I took 3 steps inside before I realised I couldn't hear anything from behind me. No traffic noise from the street, which was fairly loud before, as it ran adjacent to a main road. No wind against the windows either. Just that invasive buzz and my own breathing, which was beginning to quicken. "Marcus?" I called. My voice sounded flat and dead. "Anyone?" No response. I pulled out my phone. No signal. The battery was at 87%, but the screen kept flickering, showing the time as 12:47, then 3:22, then 9:01, and then back to 12:47 again. I shut it off and shoved it in my pocket. The logical thing to do was to turn around and leave. I'd sated my curiosity. I could now just get on with the job again. But when I looked back, the door I'd come through was gone. In its place was just another stretch of grey-blue carpet and overhead lights. I'd only taken a couple of steps, so there was no way I could have gotten lost. My pulse kicked up. I walked back to where the door should have been and ran my hands along the wall. Solid. No seams, no hinges, nothing. "Okay," I said again, like saying it would make things make sense. "Okay." I started walking. There had to be an exit somewhere. There had to be. The room couldn't go on forever. It was physically impossible. I passed door after door, each one identical. Each one with that same Victorian keyhole that didn't match anything else in the space. I tried a few of them. Locked. All of them locked. The lights overhead buzzed louder. My headache got worse. I don't know how long I walked. Time felt slippery in that place, like it was moving faster or slower, depending on which direction I looked. My phone was useless. My watch had stopped. The lights never changed. No flicker or dimming. Just that constant, oppressive brightness that made everything look washed out and wrong. Eventually, I found another door that was different. This one was open. Just a crack, like the first one had been. I could see another hallway beyond it, identical to the one I was in. More carpet, more lights, more doors. I stepped through. The all-invasive hum that I'd gotten used to by now changed pitch. It was subtle, a shift from a low drone to something higher, almost like a voice. Not words, not exactly, but it had a strange rhythm to it. It sounded like someone trying to speak through a broken radio, or when you can just hear the familiar cadence of speech through layers of walls. Like when someone in your apartment building has the TV on too loud. I kept walking. The hallway branched, left or right. I went right, purely because right felt less wrong than left, even though I couldn't explain why. Yet again, more doors and more lights. The voice that wasn't a voice grew louder. I tried another door. This one opened. The room inside was small, maybe 10 feet by 10 feet, and completely empty, except for a desk. Not an office desk, a school desk. The kind with the chair attached and the little storage cubby underneath the seat. It looked ancient, like something from the 1950s. All scratched wood and chipped green paint. Someone had carved words into the top of the desk. I leaned closer, squinting under the bright glare of the lights. "Turn back while you still have a face." I backed out of the room so fast, I slammed into the wall behind me. The impact sent a jolt of pain through my shoulder, but it also did something else. It reminded me that I was real, that I had weight and mass, and a body that could feel pain. For some reason, I needed reminding of that, as it felt like I'd stepped into a dream. I looked down at my hands. They looked normal. I touched my face. It felt like my face. Stubble on my jaw. The bump on my nose from where I broke it in high school. The scar on my forehead from a childhood bike accident. Everything was where it should be. Except I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to check. That if I stopped paying attention, something might change. I pulled out my phone again, hoping it would work long enough to use the camera as a mirror. The screen lit up, showing the time as 12:47. Odd. I switched to the camera app. The screen went black. Not off, black. Like it was showing me something, but there was nothing to see. I tapped the screen. The black rippled like water. a shape moved beneath it. Something pale and formless, twisting and unfolding in ways that I couldn't explain. I'd never seen anything like it. Without trying to think too much about it, I shut the phone off again and shoved it back in my pocket. The strange voice-like humming was getting louder. It was coming from deeper in the complex of hallways, past more branching corridors and more locked doors. I didn't want to go towards it. Every fibre of my being was screaming at me to go the other way. But every time I tried, the hallways seemed to shift, turning me back and guiding me forward. It started to feel like I had no choice in the matter, that I was on an inescapable path. To what exactly, I had no idea. I passed another open door. Inside was a row of filing cabinets, all of them open, all of them empty, except for one. The middle drawer was filled with teeth. Human teeth. Thousands of them, piled up like gravel. I didn't go inside. The next open door had a conference table. 12 chairs, all of them facing the same direction. On the table was a birthday cake with candles that burned with black flames. The cake was covered in icing that spelled out a message. "Welcome home, David." I slammed the door shut and ran. The hallways continued to twist, and it felt like I was running forever. The voice-like noise was everywhere now, as though it was coming from everywhere and nowhere all at once. It wasn't trying to speak anymore. It was laughing. I found another door. This one was different. Not black wood, but steel, like a fire exit. I grabbed the push bar and shoved. It opened into another hallway. But this one wasn't endless. This one had windows. I could see outside. Not the street, not the parking lot, just grey. Flat, featureless grey that extended in all directions. Like the building was suspended in a void. Like purgatory. I stood in front of the window for a long time, staring into that nothingness, before I realised something was wrong. The window had a reflection. I could see myself standing there, but my reflection was facing the wrong way. It was looking at me. I stumbled back, and my reflection smiled. That's when I ran for real. I didn't care which direction. I didn't care about finding an exit. I just ran, slamming through hallways and doors, with my vision blurring by the minute. The lights overhead began to strobe wildly, and in the spaces between the flashes, I saw things moving. Strange things. Terrifying things. Shapes that walked on legs that bent the wrong way. Faces that looked almost human, but weren't quite. Like someone had sculpted them from memory and gotten the proportions just slightly off. I burst through another door and found myself in a stairwell. Real stairs. Concrete and metal railings and exit signs. I ran down, taking the steps 3 at a time, and hit the ground floor door hard enough to bruise my shoulder again. I was back in the Marchmont Complex, the real one. I could see the lobby through the door's window, empty and dusty, exactly as I'd left it. I shoved the door open and ran outside to the parking lot. My truck was there, but Marcus's car was gone. The sky was still that dirty dishwater grey. I got in my truck, locked the doors, and sat there shaking for 20 minutes before I could steady my hands enough to start the engine. I never filed a report on the Marchmont Complex. I told the company I'd gotten food poisoning halfway through the inspection and couldn't finish. they sent someone else. He didn't find anything unusual. 53 doors on the 4th floor, just like the blueprint said. I checked. But sometimes, late at night, I'll be standing in front of a door. Any door. My bathroom, my bedroom, the door to my office. And I'll see it. Just for a second. That dark wood. That Victorian keyhole. And I'll wonder if it's really gone. Or if it's just waiting for me to stop paying attention. Waiting for me to forget I still have a face.